My name is Autumn Hayes. I'm 34 years old, and I design security systems for a living. Cameras, alarms, access control, all of it. I'm the person rich people call when they want to sleep at night, knowing every corner of their property is under control. What I didn't expect was that the system I installed to protect the man I loved would end up protecting me instead. I've been a residential security consultant for about 8 years. It's not glamorous, but it's niche, and I'm good at it. I know the difference between paranoia and preparedness. I know how to walk into a house, see all the blind spots, and make sure no one can slip through without being seen. Ironically, I never thought the real blind spot would be the person lying next to me. I met Evan 2 years ago at a friend's barbecue. It was one of those late summer gatherings where the air smelled like grilled corn and charcoal, and everyone pretended they weren't already dreading Monday. He had just bought his first condo downtown and was talking, loudly and dramatically, about how he hated sleeping alone. Every tiny noise made him jump. The pipes creaked. Must be a burglar. The neighbor's door slammed. Clearly someone trying to break into his place. He was joking, but under the humor, I heard real fear. My friend Jenna nudged me and whispered, "Security client, 6 o'clock." I laughed, walked over, and introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Autumn. I make scared homeowners sleep better. You sound like my target demographic." He grinned, a little embarrassed. "Evan, newly terrified condo owner. So you're what, like a security expert?" "Something like that," I said, handing him my card. "We can make your condo Fort Knox if you want." What started as a professional consult turned into coffee. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into, "Let's binge this show together." Before long, I knew how he took his coffee, which side of the bed he preferred, and that he had a habit of stress tapping his thumb against his glass when he was lying about being okay. Within 6 months, we were officially a couple. By our 1-year anniversary, we were talking about moving in together, eventually. We didn't rush it. We kept our own places, but we had keys to each other's homes and spent most nights together. Usually at his condo, because it was closer to downtown where we both worked. Very early on, I did something for him that I'd normally charge a lot of money for. I installed a full security system in his condo as a gift. "Are you sure?" he'd asked when I showed up with boxes of equipment. "This stuff isn't cheap, Autumn." "Consider it my extremely practical love language," I joked. "I don't do flowers. I do motion sensors." We put in a video doorbell, 3 interior cameras, living room, kitchen, and hallway, and a smart lock system. As always, I followed my standard protocol. I created separate admin and user accounts. I set Evan's phone as the primary admin with full control. I kept a secondary user access account on my own devices for emergencies and maintenance, but only with his explicit, written consent. I have a simple rule. I never rely on "but we're dating" as permission. I document everything, every setting, every access level. It protects the client, and it protects me. We even had a conversation about it at his kitchen island one evening as I finalized the setup. "So, technically, you could just sit at home and watch me walk around in my underwear?" he asked, half teasing, half serious. "Technically," I replied. "No. Practically? Also no. The cameras record when they detect motion and store footage in the cloud for 30 days. You have admin access. You control what gets deleted. I only log in if something goes wrong or you ask me to." He'd nodded, seemingly reassured. "Okay, I trust you." At the time, that sentence made my chest feel warm. Later, I'd replay it in my head like a sick joke. We rarely checked this footage. Every once in a while, he'd pull up the feed if a package got dropped off, or if a loud bang in the hallway freaked him out. For the most part, the system just existed. A silent guardian. I never used my access to peek in when he was home. That was a line I refused to cross. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago. I was flying back from a 4-day business trip to Phoenix. A wealthy client had hired me to upgrade the security on his vacation home. It was profitable, but the desert heat in September was brutal, and by the time I boarded my flight home, I felt like my bones were sunburned. My ticket said 1:30 a.m. arrival, which is already late, but due to favorable winds or whatever magic pilots do, we landed just after midnight. I remember glancing at the time and thinking I could either Uber home to my place across town or go straight to Evan's, crash into his bed, and steal his pillow like I always did. I chose Evan. In the back of the Uber, I texted him. Me, landed early, be there in about 10:15. Read. No response. Not unusual for him at that hour. Evan could sleep through an earthquake. His building was mostly dark when I arrived. I used my key to let myself in quietly, the way you do when you don't want to wake someone you love. The moment I stepped inside, a strange stillness wrapped around me. The only light came from a small nightlight plugged into the kitchen outlet. The condo smelled faintly of red wine. I dropped my bag by the door and headed toward the kitchen to get a glass of water. That's when I saw them. 2 wine glasses in the sink. One, his usual clear tumbler. The other, a slightly taller glass, with a faint lipstick mark on the rim. My brain tried to be reasonable. Maybe Isla came over. Maybe they watched a movie and she left. He had female friends. I had male friends. We weren't those people who freaked out about that. Still, something about the way the glasses were sitting, side by side, like they'd been set down at the same time, made my stomach tighten. I forced myself to brush it off and headed down the short hallway to his bedroom, walking softly on the hardwood floor. The room was dark, the blackout curtains drawn. I could make out the familiar shape of Evan in bed, facing away from the door, breathing slow and even. For a brief moment, the sight of him there calmed me. I set my bag down and went into the bathroom to wash my face. I flicked on the light. That's when I saw it. A woman's toiletry bag sitting on the counter. Not mine. It was a sleek, zippered bag with a pattern I'd never seen before, half open, revealing travel-sized skincare bottles, and a tube of liquid lipstick that matched the color on the glass in the sink a little too perfectly. The sound in my ears changed. It was like someone turned on white noise inside my skull. I stood very still. My heartbeat picked up hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. Maybe it's a friend's. Maybe someone stayed over while I was gone. Maybe he told me and I forgot. But Evan hadn't mentioned anyone crashing here, and I don't forget things like that. I turned off the light and went back into the bedroom, my mind doing that frantic thing where it tries to stitch together a version of events that doesn't hurt. I leaned over him and touched his shoulder gently. "Evan," I whispered. "Hey, it's me." He jolted slightly, then squinted up at me, disoriented. "Autumn, what time is it?" "Just after midnight," I said. "My flight got in early." He blinked a few times, then gave me a sleepy, half smile. "You're back." "Yeah," I hesitated. "Did you have someone over tonight?" His expression shifted, just a flicker, barely there, but I've built an entire career on noticing the smallest things. "Yeah," he said after a beat, rubbing his face. "Actually, Lena from work had too much to drink at happy hour. Her place is way across town, so I let her crash here for a bit while she sobered up. She left an hour ago?" My chest went cold. "Lena," I repeated. I knew that name. He'd mentioned her before, his coworker, talented, single, promoted recently. "Yeah, Lena," he said, a little too casually. "Don't be jealous, okay? She was drunk. I was just being a decent human." I swallowed. "She left an hour ago?" "Yeah." He nodded, then rolled onto his back. "Called an Uber. You're reading a lot into this, babe." I tried to keep my voice neutral. "She left her toiletry bag in your bathroom." That made him pause. Just a second, but it was there. "Oh, right. She's been staying at a hotel because her apartment flooded," he said quickly. "She had her stuff with her at the bar. Must have forgotten it here." The explanation could have made sense, but something was off. He wouldn't meet my eyes. His hand was tapping the sheet near his hip. Fast, erratic. His tell. "Okay," I said softly. "I trust you." The words felt like glass in my mouth. "I'm wired from the flight," I added, forcing a smile he couldn't see in the dark. "I'm gonna check a few emails in the living room." He exhaled, relieved. Too relieved. "Yeah, sure. I'm going back to sleep." I walked out, my legs moving on their own. In the living room, I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. The familiar security dashboard glowed to life. I stared at the login screen for a long moment, my cursor blinking like a question. I never checked the cameras when he was home, ever. That was my line. Tonight, something was different. With a tightness in my chest, I entered my authorized user credentials and accessed the cloud storage. The system loaded thumbnails from the doorbell, hallway, and living room. I clicked on the most recent file from the front door camera, time-stamped a little after 11 p.m. The footage opened full screen. There, in crystal clarity, I watched Lena walk out of the condo. She wasn't stumbling, she wasn't clinging to the walls, she wasn't drunk. And the way Evan kissed her goodbye at the door, no one could mistake that for anything friendly. My stomach dropped. I didn't hit pause. I scrolled back to earlier in the evening and clicked on another clip, this one from just after 6:30 p.m. The front door opened. Lena stepped inside, fully put together, with an overnight bag slung over her shoulder and a bottle of wine in her hand. Evan met her at the door. They didn't hesitate. They kissed like they'd done it 100 times before. The hallway camera caught them disappearing toward the bedroom, hands all over each other. The living room footage later showed them curled up together on the couch, wine glasses in hand, bodies pressed close, laughing at something only they could hear. I sat there, alone in the dark, watching my relationship fall apart from 3 different angles. And for the first time in my life, I wished I hadn't installed the perfect system. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the pause frame on my laptop screen. It felt like the room stopped breathing with me. There was the image. Evan at the door, Lena leaning into him, their mouths pressed together like it was the most natural thing in the world. Their bodies framed by the doorway I had personally secured with a reinforced strike plate and custom smart lock. I had fortified the very entryway where he betrayed me. I swallowed hard, the taste of metal at the back of my throat. Part of me wanted to close the laptop and pretend I hadn't seen any of it, to let him keep his fiction, to pretend my heart didn't know how to collapse like this. But the still frame burned into my eyes. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This wasn't a drunk kiss or a boundary crossed once. This was routine, calculated, comfortable. My hands felt strangely steady as I clicked into the folder labeled Motion Log, Hallway. File after file showed activity on nights when I was in Phoenix. I clicked one at random from 2 nights earlier. There she was again. Lena entering at 7:12 p.m., Evan greeting her with that same familiar closeness. Her laughing. Him touching her waist like it belonged to him. And then another file, and another. One by one, the thumbnails transformed from harmless gray squares into a whole map of betrayal. She had been here at least 4 times in 4 days. Stayed the night twice. Left early in the mornings, slipping out like she thought no one would notice. Except the cameras caught everything. I leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. My chest didn't ache. It felt hollow, scraped out. The betrayal alone was enough to break me. But the way he had looked me in the eye minutes earlier, the casual lies, the confidence, it made my skin crawl. But something still gnawed at me, something deeper, something I hadn't yet put words to. It was the way he said Lena earlier. Too easy, too smooth, too familiar. And then I remembered. Months ago, we were drinking wine in the same living room, curled on opposite ends of the couch. He'd been rambling about work stress, team restructuring, new promotions upstairs. He mentioned offhandedly, Lena got promoted again. She's good, but I don't know. She's sort of my ex from years back. We didn't last long, nothing dramatic. I hadn't thought twice about it then. People have pasts. So do I. But now, watching the way they interacted, the way her body curved into his, the autopilot familiarity between them, there was nothing years back about it. My phone buzzed faintly on the cushion beside me, making me jump. I flipped it over. 2:04 a.m. A spam email. Nothing else. The condo was silent. Through the hallway, I could hear Evan shifting in bed, oblivious to the ghostly glow of the laptop screen revealing his secrets. I took a slow, shaky breath. I needed to hear him lie again. Not because I doubted the footage, not because I wanted some twisted confession, but because I wanted clarity, closure. I wanted to look at the man he really was, not the one I thought I loved. I closed the laptop halfway and stood. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else as I walked back to the bedroom. The dark felt heavier now, as if the shadows themselves knew what had happened. I turned on the bedside lamp. Evan, I said gently, wake up. He stirred, groaned, and rolled toward me. What's going on? It's late. I know, I said quietly, but we need to talk. He blinked, rubbing his eyes. About what? The Lena situation, I said, keeping my voice soft. Steady. It's bothering me. He exhaled sharply, annoyed. Autumn, I told you. She was drunk. She slept it off here. You're making it a thing when it didn't have to be. I watched him carefully. So she was only here tonight? He nodded. Yes, just tonight. What is this, an interrogation? And she got here drunk? Yes. His voice hardened with irritation. I already told you that. And she left around 11? He huffed. Yes, Autumn. Can I go back to sleep now? The lie was so clean it almost impressed me. I gave him a small, quiet smile. Okay, give me 1 minute, I said. I'm going to grab my laptop. His eyes flicked open wider for just a fraction of a second. Just enough for me to see panic begin to creep in. What laptop? He asked. The one in the living room, I replied simply. I want to show you something. He sat up a little too fast. Autumn, what are you doing? His voice cracked slightly. Seriously, what are you doing? Nothing yet, I said. Just sit tight. I walked out before he could react, picked up the laptop, and returned to the bedroom. He was sitting upright now, chest rising and falling quicker than before. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened the laptop, didn't press play, didn't even enlarge the footage. Just the thumbnails on the screen, the doorbell cam, the hallway cam, the living room cam were enough. Evan stared at them like they were a countdown to his own execution. Autumn. His voice was barely a whisper. Please don't. Don't what? I asked gently. Don't look? Don't ask? Don't know? He swallowed, hard. You've been spying on me? He stuttered. That's insane. That's controlling. This is an invasion of privacy. There it was, the exact script cheaters always reach for. No, I said calmly. I never checked anything while I was away. I only looked tonight because something felt wrong when I walked in. He shook his head rapidly. This isn't right. You can't just... This is obsessive. The cameras are for security, I said evenly. And right now, they're doing their job. I turned the screen slightly toward him. Not fully. Just enough to show one clear freeze frame. Evan at the door, Lena in his arms, their lips pressed together. Timestamp, 6:37 p.m. He froze, the blood draining from his face so quickly it looked like someone had pulled the plug. That's not, he began. It's exactly what it looks like, I said softly. But it's okay. You don't have to explain. He shot to his feet suddenly, pacing with both hands buried in his hair. Autumn, listen, I didn't mean for this to... This isn't... You're always judging me. You're always analyzing every little thing. You're... Evan, I interrupted gently. Look at me. He stopped. You lied to me, I said. That's all. That's the whole story. His mouth opened and closed, like he was searching for the right shape of a truth he didn't have. We were going to break up anyway, he blurted suddenly, grabbing onto the words like a life raft. Your job. You never made time. You cared about your stupid cameras more than me. That's funny, I said softly, because right now, they're the only things in this house telling the truth. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I exhaled slowly and stood up. I'm going to pack my things. His expression flickered from panic to anger to something almost like fear. Autumn, wait! But I didn't. I packed the few clothes I kept at his place. My toothbrush, my charger. Folded everything neatly, not because I wasn't hurting, but because I refused to leave in anger. Before I left, I opened the admin dashboard on his phone, and I removed my access. Not to punish him, but because I wasn't going to give him ammunition to twist the story later. I zipped my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked past him. He didn't stop me. He didn't reach for me. He didn't apologize. He just stood in the doorway, looking like someone whose lies finally ran out of places to hide. At 2:47 a.m., I stepped into the Uber and quietly closed the door behind me. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't entirely sure where home was anymore. I didn't cry on the ride home. I thought I would. God, I expected to. The kind of ugly crying that knots your throat and makes strangers ask if you're okay. But instead, I sat very still in the back of that Uber, watching the city blur past the window. Every streetlight, every crosswalk, every familiar corner felt strangely distant, like I was floating a few inches above reality. Shock does that. It wraps your emotions in bubble wrap. By the time I reached my apartment, the numbness had turned into a kind of sharp, quiet clarity. The kind that arrives after a disaster, when your brain finally understands that something irreversible has happened. I let myself inside, dropped my bag on the floor, and stood there in the dark living room. I said it out loud, just to hear the words in the air. He cheated on me. The silence swallowed the sentence whole. The next morning, my phone lit up with 9 missed calls from Evan. Then 15 unread texts ranging from, "Please call me, we need to talk," to, "You don't understand what was happening," to, "We weren't even serious like that," to the classic, "If you cared, you wouldn't have SPI cameras in my house." I blocked the number. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. It started on day 3. Jake, my mutual friend who worked with Evan, called me during lunch. He didn't even say hello first. "Autumn, you need to know something." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" "You're not going to like it," he said. "Evan's been telling people at work that you installed hidden cameras in his condo. Secret ones, like to spy on him." I closed my eyes. "Of course he was," Jake continued, lowering his voice. "He's saying you used your job to control him, and that you watched him through the cameras without his consent." A sick, cold feeling spread across my ribs. "That's not just a lie," I whispered. "That could ruin me." "I know," Jake said. "That's why I'm calling. Some people believe him, some don't, but HR heard about it." I sank into my chair. My livelihood depended on trust. My entire business was reputation-based. People hired me not only because I was skilled, but because I was ethical. If word spread that I secretly monitored a romantic partner, I was done. My breath came shallow, trembling. Jake, I documented everything. I know you did, he said, but not everyone knows that. I rubbed my forehead, trying to process the sudden pivot. Evan wasn't trying to clear his name. He was trying to destroy mine before I could speak. A preemptive strike. Cowardly, predictable, terrifying. I'm sorry, Autumn, Jake said softly. I told them the cameras were installed over a year ago with full permission. But Evan is spinning it like you manipulated him into signing something. I let out a bitter laugh. Unbelievable. Actually, Jake said, it's exactly what I expected. The guy hates taking responsibility for anything. I forced myself to breathe, slow, controlled. Thanks for telling me, I said quietly. I need to call my lawyer. I met with my attorney the next morning. A practical woman in her 50s, silver hair pulled back in a low bun, glasses perched low on her nose. Her expression stayed perfectly neutral as I explained everything from start to finish. When I mentioned the footage, she raised a hand. Did you or did you not obtain explicit written permission from your partner before installing and accessing the cameras? I did, I said. I have the documents. And did you ever access the cameras without his knowledge before this incident? No, I said firmly. Never. I can show the access logs. She nodded slowly. Then legally, you're fine. Legally, I repeated. But reputationally? She sighed. Reputation is more complicated. If he spreads lies about your business practices, that could cause long-term damage. I recommend you get ahead of the narrative with people who matter. I frowned. You mean release footage? No, she said quickly. Not intimate or private recordings, but enough to establish that your partner understood the system, consented to its installation, and was aware of the cameras. I swallowed. You're saying I should defend myself. Yes, she said simply. Quietly, discreetly, factually, before he fills in the blanks with fiction. So I did something I never thought I would ever have to do. I created a private, password-protected Dropbox folder labeled Evan. Consent and access verification. Inside it, I included a copy of the written consent forms he signed, screenshots of his admin dashboard from months earlier, timestamps showing his acknowledgement of motion alerts, the footage of Lena entering the condo multiple days in a row, nothing intimate, just the hallway and doorbell angles, footage of Evan and Lena kissing at the door, proof that I only accessed the system after returning home early. Then I shared the folder with 3 people. Jake, our mutual friend Megan, my former colleague Brandon, who regularly referred clients to me. They weren't gossips. They weren't dramatic. They were people who could quietly correct the narrative if it spread into professional circles. I sent them all the same message. Please don't share this publicly. I'm not trying to embarrass him. I'm just trying to protect my business, my name, and my livelihood. All 3 responded with something along the lines of, "We've got your back." For the first time in days, the crushing weight on my chest lifted just a little. By the end of the week, things started shifting. Evan had clearly expected everyone to blindly believe his version. But when Jake and a few others pushed back, calmly, firmly, factually, the cracks in his story began to show. HR called Lena in for a conversation. The day after that, she was quietly reassigned to a different team with a new supervisor. I heard about it through the grapevine, but I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to know the details. All I knew was this. The truth has a way of finding its own legs, even when lies sprint. And just when I thought this nightmare was finally settling, I ran into someone who would shake the last piece of the story loose. It happened on a slow Wednesday afternoon, one of those days where the city feels half asleep and even the air seems to move sluggishly. I had just finished a consultation with a new client and ducked into a coffee shop to grab something sweet and overly caffeinated. I wasn't expecting to see anyone I knew, especially not Yela. She was seated near the window, stirring her iced latte in a slow circle, headphones around her neck, eyes drifting across the street in a daze. Evan had always said she was one of his closest friends, the kind who'd known him forever. We'd hung out a handful of times, friendly but not close. I planned to do the polite nod, keep moving, and leave the past where it belonged, behind glass, with caution tape around it. But as soon as she saw me, her eyes widened. She lifted her hand and waved me over. I felt my shoulders tense. I wasn't in the mood for sympathy, or worse, confrontation. Still, it felt rude to ignore her. So I walked over. "Hey," I said cautiously. She gestured to the seat across from her. Please, sit." I hesitated, then lowered myself into the chair. She studied me for a moment with an expression I couldn't place. Not pity, not judgment, something closer to guilt. "I'm glad I ran into you," she said softly. "I've been wanting to talk." I braced internally. "About what?" "About Evan," she said, "and everything." I exhaled through my nose. "I don't think I need any more details." "No," she said quickly. "You deserve clarity, at least from someone who isn't trying to weaponize the truth." Her wording made something tighten inside me. "Okay," I said quietly. "Go ahead." She leaned forward, folding her hands. "I told Evan he was making a huge mistake," she began. "Not just with Lena, with how he handled everything with you." I lifted an eyebrow. "He told you about the breakup?" "He told everyone," she said with a sigh. "Or rather, his version of it." I didn't respond. She continued. "I knew he was lying. He conveniently left out the part where he'd been seeing Lena for weeks, and he didn't mention the part where he consented to the system you installed." A humorless smile tugged at my mouth. Shocking. "And then," Isla said, "you know what really broke me? He started trying to frame you as controlling, when he was the one who couldn't handle being with someone successful." I blinked. "What?" She nodded solemnly. "He was jealous of you, Autumn, constantly. He complained that you made more money, that you were always in demand, that you had your life together in ways he didn't." My stomach tightened in disbelief. "He never showed that to me." "No," Isla said, "because he hid it under jokes. You know how he teased you about being too serious, too organized, too smart? That wasn't teasing. That was insecurity." A cold understanding settled over me, heavy, undeniable. "I thought he was just playful," I said softly. "That's how he wanted you to see it," she said gently. "But he couldn't keep up, not with someone like you. And Lena, she made him feel needed. She fed his ego. He needed that more than he needed honesty." It was a sharp truth, one that fit a little too perfectly. I sat back, absorbing it. She let the silence stretch before speaking again. "You didn't deserve what he did," she said. "Not even a little. And for what it's worth, the rumors he tried to start, most people didn't buy it once they realized how panicked he was." He overplayed his hand. I raised an eyebrow. "Panicked?" "Oh yeah," she said, eyes widening. "When he found out people were pushing back, Jake especially, Evan freaked, started blaming everyone but himself. A small, unexpected warmth fluttered in my chest. Jake had gone to bat for me, Megan too, and now Isla. For a moment, I didn't feel so isolated. "Well," I said, swallowing back the emotion, "I'm glad the truth finally caught up." Isla nodded, then tilted her head slightly. "Can I give you one piece of unsolicited advice?" I almost laughed. "I guess." She smiled softly. "Keep your next partner's access separate from your work. And maybe..." "Maybe?" I echoed. "Maybe stop dating people whose homes you upgrade." She winked, but there was real wisdom beneath the teasing. I let out a breathy laugh, a tired one, but real. "Yeah," I said. "Already implemented both policies." She smiled, relieved. "Good." When I stood to leave, she touched my wrist gently. "You're stronger than he ever made you feel," she said quietly. "And you're going to be okay. Better than okay." For the first time since the breakup, I believed it. Walking home from the coffee shop, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but steadier. The truth didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the betrayal or the humiliation. But it did something just as important. It returned my life to me. And as the days turned into weeks, and the noise around Evan faded like the tail end of a storm, something unexpected happened. For the first time in a long while, I started sleeping better. 6 months later, the morning light filtering into my apartment felt different, warmer, calmer, like the world had finally stopped holding its breath around me. Life had settled into a steady rhythm again. My business was thriving. Stress-free clients, clearer contracts, no romantic entanglements with anyone whose doorbell I wired, a healthier boundary between Autumn the consultant and Autumn the woman. I was dating casually, nothing serious, nothing binding, just slow conversations and gentle curiosity. I didn't feel rushed. Trauma has a way of recalibrating your standards. Suddenly, basic honesty felt like a luxury item. And most importantly, my peace felt unbothered. No sudden phone calls, no late-night panic attacks, no half-truth explanations that scratched at my nerves. It was quiet. Beautifully, gloriously quiet. One Thursday, I arrived early to a downtown cafe for a client meeting. It was the kind of place where the baristas wore vintage band tees, plants hung from macrame ropes, and the espresso machine hissed like it had a personality. I ordered a caramel cappuccino and sat by the window. That's when I saw him. Evan, walking down the sidewalk across the street. Same jacket, same hurried gait, head slightly dipped, like the world had gotten heavier since I last saw him. My heart didn't lurch. My stomach didn't twist. I just observed him. Like watching an old coworker you once knew but had nothing left to say to. He didn't see me. He passed the window, rounding the corner, disappearing into the crowd. I took a sip of my drink. It tasted good, better than it used to. Before I could dwell on it, someone slid into the empty seat across from me with a dramatic sigh. It was Jake. I blinked. Is this a surprise ambush? He grinned. Relax. I was picking up coffee for the office. Saw you through the window. Then he lowered his voice. And yeah, I also saw him. I smirked into my cup. Any workplace drama I should be aware of? Oh, plenty, Jake said. Not about you, though. I arched an eyebrow. Go on? He leaned forward conspiratorially. You know how Lena got quietly moved to another department? Yeah. Well, he continued, turns out the HR investigation wasn't just about her. It was about him. I sat up straighter. Evan? Jake nodded. Apparently he'd been bending rules left and right. Not just with workplace relationships, with reporting, deadlines, even small things like filing expenses properly. I blinked, surprised. He used to complain about how everyone else at work was sloppy. Projection, Jake said simply. The man was a walking subplot. I couldn't help laughing. That tracks. Then he added more seriously, I thought you should know. Most people never believe the story he told about you. The way he spun it made him look defensive, desperate. And when we corrected the timeline, the whole narrative fell apart. A warmth spread through my chest. Not vindication, just relief. Thanks for having my back, I said softly. Jake shrugged. You deserve the truth, and frankly, you handled it better than anyone else would have. I gave him a small smile. I guess I was trained for surveillance-related catastrophes. He laughed, then stood up. Well, if you ever need a personal reference again, just ask. Preferably one that doesn't involve cheating boyfriends and cloud-based video evidence. Noted. He grabbed his coffees and left with a wave. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the spot where Evan had walked past. I didn't feel angry, or sad, or nostalgic, just reflective. It hit me then. If I hadn't installed that security system, if I hadn't come home early that night, if I hadn't listened to the quiet instinct that something wasn't right, I probably would have stayed with him for months, maybe years, loving the version of him he wanted me to see, not the one who existed when he thought no one was watching. I rubbed my thumb over the rim of my cup. People talk about security systems like they're meant to keep strangers out, but sometimes they keep the truth in. Sometimes they illuminate the things you can't afford to ignore. Sometimes they save you from the future you didn't know would break you. I stood, tossing my cup away just as my client walked through the door. Autumn? She asked. I smiled. Let's get started.